I wanted to introduce this evening's speaker, Samir Bhatnagar. He is Associate Director of Product at Forge Global, and he's worked more than 15 years in product strategy, ranging from smaller firms like Forge Global to larger companies such as Salesforce, IBM, and Oracle. Has a strong emphasis on SaaS. In 2020, he completed the Stanford LEAD program, which is a year-long executive education program with the Stanford Business School, Graduate School of Business, I should say. In 2023, he was invited to teach and currently teaches design thinking from insights to viability and design for disruption, which I think are both fantastic classes. If you've ever delved into the design thinking book or any of the things around design for disruption, those are fantastic, very Silicon Valley type courses and highly useful for product management. And with that, I will stop sharing here and turn it over to Samir.
Awesome. Sounds good, Tom. Thanks for the introduction, and I'm super excited to be here. Happy Wednesday, middle of the day, hump day, I guess, is the best way of saying it. Thanks everyone for joining here for sure. Let me start sharing my screen. All right, Tom. So can you see okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Awesome. All right. All right. Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining. So my name's Samir Bhatnagar, and today, what I want to do today is I'll start off with a little bit of my background and kind of how I got into product, kind of set some foundation in the beginning. And then what I'll do is I'll actually walk you through on one of the use cases that I've been working over a period of almost 9 months, and the challenges that we went through and lessons that me and the team that we learned along the way for sure. And I was telling Tom and team here, I do want to keep it very interactive. I might not be able to see the chat message, but I know the team here is keeping a really good eye on the chat messages. So feel free to stop me and ask any questions or drop a question in the chat, and happy to answer anything as I'm going along for sure. All right, so having said that, just a little background about myself. I basically did my undergrad from UC Berkeley. I started off as a software developer at a big company called IBM. Eventually, I moved into more of a solution architect, team leader. And this is one of the highlights that I did back when I was at IBM, where I was helping Schwab back then start on a digital transformation journey. They were using a lot of legacy IBM and Oracle applications, and I helped them start their journey on a digital transformation, and it led to one of my biggest deals that I've helped from a 10 million revenue. Eventually, I actually moved into more of a pre-sales solution architect and moved the last been 6-7 years. I was in this MarTech ad tech domain, having worked for companies like Salesforce and Oracle, and some of these brands, I was one of their earlier adopters of technologies that they're using and targeting end users like me and you. So happy to have worked with companies like JCPenney, Southwest, Dallas Cowboys. I don't know if anyone likes football here, but of course, maybe the Sacramento Kings. Both sporting events, and they both started with Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and I was heavily involved with their journey from a MarTech ad tech perspective. You know, for me, I felt like the journey was coming to everything was going great in my career, and I realized like I was always influencing product and not really having the keys to the kingdom, if that's the right way of putting it. And like Tom said, I went back to this program through Grad School of Business at Stanford, a year-long program. And it really opened my eyes of thinking out of the box, trying to be that change agent, and really, how do I have more influence versus trying to sell, position, and architect solutions. That actually really opened my mindset and thinking, and it led me to pivoting into product. And I started off as a senior product manager at this company called Forge Global. Forge Global, at a high level, it's a B2C marketplace platform to trade pre-IPO shares. So pretty exciting technologies. Within a year, I did get promoted into an associate director of product. Meanwhile, like kind of Tom alluded to, I been writing a lot of blogs and got the fortune of sharing my journey of pivoting from a solution consultant, solution architect, team leader into product. And one thing led to the other. And now I'm also last year helping teach design thinking and design for disruption at Stanford. So it's been a phenomenal journey, and where I almost consider myself as a lifelong learner, where the learning never stops, and I get to interact with really smart engineers and developers and other product folks in my classes, where I'm also learning from them and helping them craft their design thinking methodology. Okay, having said that, sorry about the shameless plug, but I have to set some context and framework, in my opinion. So I started off as a senior product manager at Forge Global. Forge Global at that time bought 2 companies under one umbrella. So there was 3 companies that all came together, and it was like the perfect storm, so to speak, where I walked in and there was a lot of these. The company was trying to move from a financial services to more like fintech. I don't know if you're familiar with this terminology, fintech. Stop me if you want, but it's essentially kind of getting out of like the broker advisor community and being more cutting edge with technologies. And then they bought a bunch of these assets and technologies, but they had no presence from a product perspective. And it was like walking into a black hole, so to speak, where suddenly they bought all these assets and you're learning all these things where there was no insights about what end users like me and you are doing. It actually built on such a legacy old framework that made the whole experience very dated. There was no level of customization. The company didn't really own the assets. It was actually a third party that had all these assets that they had outsourced to. And it just was such a poor experience, where it led to our call centers were just inundated with just basic things around forgot my passwords, I can't see my financial information, my information is dated. And in fact, not only were our call centers were inundated, but it led to poor operational experience. And there was a lot of handshakes between call centers and operations. And this is not the job of the operations team. And it just, there was no analytics. So we had no insights. And this application was a very high profile application. And our sales team were trying to grow the B2B2C business, the partner ecosystem, but they would never show this application. This was the golden child, so to speak, and they were always kind of shy away from it. They were, I don't want to say embarrassed, but they would just talk about the APIs or the back end and all the foundation and the plumbing things. And in fact, this got to the point where this is escalated all the way to our CEO and our GM, and they were like, we really need to do something about it, because there was no forward thinking. There was no keeping the customer in mind. It was all like out of sight, out of mind. And it was like the perfect storm for me to walk in and realize like there's a lot of exciting stuff here. And this, I saw this as a kind of leveraging some of the things I learned at the LEAD program, where I'm like, wow, this is great. Where in the beginning back at IBM, it was like such the structure. And now I have this whole portfolio of products, but then where do I get started? And one of the things that I'm really big on is working with stakeholders and working with senior leadership, but like quickly formulating my own point of view. And it's always consisting of 3 C's, as many of you might know. Number 1 is focusing on our customers. What do they care about? Why do they care? What is their pain point, and what are their needs? Number two, focus more on the needs of our business, the company goals. What are we trying to do as an organization? What are our core values? And number three, looking at from a competition and ecosystem, like what are not necessarily this small domain, but maybe even looking at like companies like Schwab, Franklin Templeton, Visa, MasterCard, all these bigger financial companies, what are they doing? And so that really helped set the vision on what we need to do, at least starting on this journey of a digital transformation on a fintech sort of experience that we want to provide to our end users. Interesting, funny thing is, I work with a lot of engineers, and even at the lead program I'm helping teach, there's a lot of really smart engineers that are always in the room, and it's all about like, let's get to the problem. Forget the problem, I have a solution for you. And they're like, let me whip up a website, let me whip up a mobile app. We can do this in ChatGPT, and it'll spit out something, and we'll get the results done. And it's a beauty on really focusing on, I had to really stop them and many other folks on, let's not focus on the solution, let's really focus on the problem. And it sounds kind of ironic, but like almost I feel like falling in love with the problem makes you really like think out of the box versus let's just get the job done. So that's one of the key things that I really harp on my teams on, whether it's I'm working with different stakeholders or different engineers or even design teams, on let's really hone in on the problem. And then of course, get buy-in and support on what you're thinking from a strategy perspective. Because like I said, the GM knew about this application, and working with great designers, I had put together what I don't know if people have heard of this tool called Miro board. It's basically a whiteboard tool to share my thinking, and then of course on what the user experience should be, and what, based on series of customer surveys that I'll get into shortly here. But that really sets the framework. The beauty is you're not in development mode right now. With the Miro board whiteboarding experience, you're setting the foundation on what you're thinking, and getting everybody to not necessarily nod their heads, but at least getting their perspectives and seeing on how are you going to do this over the next 6 to 9 months per se. Any questions along the way? If not, I'll keep going. Awesome. All right. I actually love this slide. It's funny, but like this, people like, I get very excited about customers that are very frustrated. And in fact, that means that they're very passionate about your technology. They value your solution very much. And it's like they care so much that they want to give you insights. And those, my unhappy customers, are my favorite customers, because you learn so much from them. You really understand on their challenges, and doesn't mean that you'll solve their problems for sure, but you can see that they're extremely, whether because you're paying a service or they're passionate about your offering, and then they actually, it's interesting. It just, listening to them is one of the things I've learned along the way. We'll talk about user empathy, but listening is another component, believe it or not, where you get so much great ideas. Here I thought I've done a lot of research, understood the ecosystem, understood the space. But when you start talking to customers, it actually helps you think out of the box and what they're trying to do. And so often I think this is what maybe Tom needs, or this is what I need, or this is what Teresa needs. But it's once you actually hone in and listen to them, listen to their needs, you actually figure out why they're trying to do this and understand their thought process. And sometimes that gets overlooked. And so if you have unhappy customers, I would really highly suggest that don't shy away, but get in front of them and let them, there's going to be frustration. They might even yell at you, scream at you. It's nothing personal, but it's great feedback is how I've been approaching it per se, for sure. Kind of going back to falling in love with the problem, and when we ran those customer surveys and customer interviews, you really get a chance to understand on why they're trying to do this. And often it's that first level of why, but you want to keep honing in. The more you hone in, the more you ask, you eventually get to the root cause, because it's, they don't know themselves. And the more you ask, the more probing questions you do, it actually leads for them to even answer, because this is why I'm doing this, and this is why I'm doing this, and now I need to upload this document, and because you guys asked this stuff. And then you start piecemealing different things that they share with you. So getting to the root cause really helped me really set the foundation from a customer perspective on what are the challenges, why they're seeing the challenges with the existing legacy application, and what they'd like to do eventually if they had the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. So getting feedback from your customers and really honing on the why, and not just the first why, but keep digging deeper and deeper, and eventually you'll get to the root cause, and you'll get all these amazing ideas that you'll be able to go back and prioritize and figure out, because suddenly it becomes what is that, Pandora's box, if that's the right term, but like a lot of great information that keeps coming along your way. And now you're like, wow, you had your own ideas, but now you've gotten great information from your customers, and then you can figure out what makes sense when you eventually get to development, for sure. This is one of my favorite slides too, I would say, where really understand the journey mapping, a day in the life. And when I say a day in the life, it doesn't mean that one day. It could be a period of over 60 days, 90 days, or 3 months or 6 months, depending on how heavy your application is or the lack thereof. And also, it also, in my opinion, opens up more doors of really thinking. There's multiple customers along the way, and there's those heavy user, casual user, and then there's, for us, it was not just from a B2C perspective, there was also advisors and brokers that we were trying to help. So that was another customer persona that we didn't think of at that time. And then for us internally, our call centers were our admin folks that were helping end users like me and you. So there was another persona. And so keeping in mind that it's just not 3 personas that we were trying to shoot for, but making sure that the solution, as the business grows, as a business pivots, you have a framework that's very extremely modular to grow and scale accordingly, and not just be limiting yourself to maybe 1 or 2 personas in the beginning. And that's the beauty of being nimble and making sure that you are, maybe in the beginning it's 1 persona, then it'll go to 2, 3, and as your business changes, as things additional personas come in, you should have the flexibility of developing something and adding different personas based on their needs, for sure. Awesome. All right, I don't see any questions so far, but so I guess I'll keep going here. Okay. The series of interviews, it gives you clarity. And in my opinion, interviews aren't one and done. It becomes a rinse and repeat process. Maybe you do it every 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. We were doing it, not just interviews, but we were doing surveys also. Once we launched the application, we were running surveys within the app. We were running to get the Net Promoter Scores, figuring out, are they passive? Are they detractors or attractors? And really understanding, at the end of the day, you can't keep everyone happy, but you want to have insights of making sure that this new application that you're looking to develop, you want to grow and you don't want to reduce the churn here. So that was one of the key objectives that I had set out from this mission perspective. Also, the end goal is it's not one and done. You want to ideally, the thought process is cross-sell and upsell. So maybe they started off with maybe that $10 a month sort of service, but eventually, as time progresses, as they see more value, you want them to start subscribing to additional capabilities and additional service. So that gives you an opportunity to cross-sell and upsell into your existing client, because you got them in, they feel comfortable, they trust you. And now as you progress, so when you're developing your applications, you have to keep that in mind, because it's not one and done. It's that rinse and repeat. And how do you add more functionality? Eventually, you want to, of course, improve not only your CSAT customer experience, but if there's additional services that you want to bring to the table, this gives you a chance to cross-sell and upsell into your existing customers. This also, having a richer experience, makes it very enticing to onboard new customers, and your total cost of ownership goes down versus, of course, you'd be hoping that you're partnering with your marketing teams and tied to the hip from a lead gen perspective. But the end goal is, once the marketing and the SEO have done their magic behind the scenes, you want to make sure that once they're on board, they're onboarded fully, and you want to prevent churn from happening. So that actually leads me to our next slide here, and this is more this is more about engineering and design and product all working together, where it should not just be product led or design led or engineering led. It should be that. I know Marty Kagan talks about this all the time, where he talks about the product leader, the design leader, and the engineering leader, almost that tied to the hip. And then, of course, you have the engineering teams assigned to you, but making sure that everyone shares this common goal. Knowledge sharing, it becomes extremely important, and that actually helps your developers, because then they see the vision. They see why you're asking for these things and what the roadmap is. And it actually builds a lot of transparency and trust within the teams to feel comfortable in, like I said in the beginning, the engineers are super smart guys and your designers are extremely creative. The more you feed them, the more you tell them, the more ideas you'll get from them. So you're almost like that, Tom, keep me honest, quarterback sort of guy from a product perspective, and you've gotten all this great insight from customers, but then you're able to prioritize working with your engineering team. But like the product person, I felt like more like a quarterback, making sure that things that I'm garnering and making sure from a feasibility perspective, can it be done, working closely with my engineers, and of course, working closely with my design team. Is it feasible from a timely perspective? So that's how I've been running my teams historically, and that always leads to kind of almost quarterback and almost like the cheerleader, because the engineers and the designers are doing the heavy work, and I'm just helping and making sure that there's no roadblocks, and credit goes to the team. And of course, from a product perspective, if things go well, you get credit for you and your team. If things go bad, you take all the blame, so to speak, along the way.
This is also very much like a quarterback. I think some of us have felt like we're the quarterback and we just got sacked by the opposing team.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Tom. Absolutely. Awesome. All right. This is kind of like the philosophy and the mindset that I like to lead, in my opinion. I'm sure there are other charts that are similar to this, but it's kind of going back to the heart of the customer. What do they need? And then, like I said, it's those series of interviews, those surveys, you have not only an hypothesis, but you have a lot of information that you're able to now with your team prioritize on, hey, what are we gonna over this next 6, 9, 12 months? And we were cutting a release every 2 weeks. And so we were almost cutting every 2 weeks was the big release, but every week we had a small release. But then we always had our overall goal and what our mission was. And now this gave us a chance to prioritize what are we going to develop, and then turn on analytics and then quickly see what are we learning. And then you have the ability to kind of rinse and repeat and really figure out what was working and what wasn't working. And then you can kind of go back and forth versus doing this whole monolithic application, kind of like the waterfall approach that you don't want to do. Wait for 2 years, and then you go ask Tom, and Tom's like, well, you didn't even, all this stuff that you're showing me doesn't even make sense. And it got from bad to worse. So that's what you really want to avoid. And that's where the agile mindset and even the team being agile and having releases every 2 weeks, if not more, it just makes it extremely powerful, because you fail really quickly and then you learn from your failures really quickly versus spending months and months and months and then realizing like, oh my God, we need to pivot back. So this has worked extremely well for us. And we did fail along the way for sure. And there were lessons learned, and then we were able to quickly pivot and learn from those lessons, and then improve our hypotheses and add additional capabilities as we were going, not only once we launched the application, but even post-launch of using this framework and mindset for sure as well too. All right, okay. So this is something something that I'm really excited about, the jobs to be done framework. It's kind of like that rubber meets the road sort of saying, where you have these theories, you have these intentions, but then the practicality comes in when you're thinking about from a customer perspective. And then this is where, when you go through your interviews and you kind of going back to the initial slide I had about those 5 whys, this really sets the situation, the motivation, and the expected outcome from a customer's perspective. And leveraging something like this has really helped, not only me, but also with my engineering and design teams, when they see like, this is what the thinking is and why we're approaching this for sure. So I would really encourage people, if you haven't really taken advantage of this is just one example of the jobs to be done framework, but it really sets from a practical implementation perspective to be really successful, that we've seen success within our organization for sure. Yeah. In this day and age, you definitely want to be data driven. Where when we launched our application, we had tons and tons of different data insights and learning about our customers, where they were failing, where they were struggling, and what they could have been doing better along the way for sure, is something that it really helps us improve our offering for sure. Because like I said in the beginning, it's not one and done and it's over. But more importantly, now that you have these insights, now you have all this data, you can really slice and dice the data and make interpretation and add additional features and based on the struggles that you're seeing here. So we were using a handful of tools. In the beginning, we were using Google Analytics, which was okay, but not the level of sophistication that I was looking for. So then we went off and bought this tool called Heap. You guys have heard of it, maybe you haven't, but there's a lot of great tools out there. We also started to use a tool called LogRocket, which is more session emulation and replays. So you can you basically see directly firsthand, and I'm using Tom as an example here, but where when Tom logs in, what is he doing? And of course, this is all PII data. So making sure that Tom's information is redacted, covered, protected, and not everyone on the team can see it, but like certain people can see it and see, like I can see where Tom is struggling with the application because I think it's the right thing, but then you actually test it out with your alpha, beta customers, and you get feedback immediately and figure out where the opportunity to grow and scale the application is for sure too.
Did you have any, I had a question on the side. Did you have any issues with kind of finding the right KPIs to choose, for instance? And how did you go about that, given that, a lot of tools that can give you 1,000 different measurements, but what do you pay attention to and how do you prioritize those?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Tom, or whoever asked it through Tom, I guess I should say. Well, it goes back to the foundation of, objectives that you set for your organization, and whether it's you want to have better lifetime value, or you want something like Tom to stay within your application and get all the things that he needs, or you want to make sure that Tom has all the access and has all this information that's readily available. So the goal is Tom is doing this very much in a self-serve sort of mindset and not having to call the call center. So there's that correlation of, is he struggling? Is he successful? Is he able to upload the documents? Is the experience kludgy? Is it intuitive? Or is he able to do all of this by himself and not having to pick up the phone and call our call center? Because that's where we're spending a lot of money, and the manpower is, and now keeping customers sat, keeping Tom happy. Of course, our call center is going to get in there. So that's something that we want to avoid as much as possible. So how do we make sure that the experience with Tom is very much self-serve? And hopefully, Tom, did that potentially answer the question there?
Yeah, I think so. Folks were kind of wondering, selecting. I've frequently seen questions where folks are asking about how to select the right metrics and then how to tie those metrics into what's actually going on with the end customers. What's the balance of interviewing the customers, and trying to read what the numbers actually mean to tie that into a narrative.
Yeah, and one of the things that we used heavily with the Heap application was we really tracked the user journey from end to end, and we created a bunch of funnel analysis, and we would see where people were dropping off or struggling, and that would immediately give us, from a KPI perspective, on the limitations or the challenges with our application, and then giving us insights like, okay, this is something that I did not even need to talk to Tom. Because of having these analytics that we had turned on, we can see that this is where 20%, 30%, 40% of people are struggling today. And then how do we improve the experience versus what we thought in the beginning was the right experience per se, for sure.
Samir, at some point, can you put in the chat the names of those tools you mentioned so we can all take advantage of your recommendation?
Yeah, yes, for sure, for sure. Happy to do that for sure at the end. This concept of A/B testing, this is something that we actually started to run, and it was the intent on really garnering experience on not necessarily introducing a lot net new features all the time and figuring out, is this going to resonate with our audience, or will it create confusion or chaos, so to speak? And we would basically test different features and seeing if it makes sense for us, because of our the financial services domain that we were in, and not a heavy application where people were logging in daily. We actually ran the test longer than 2 weeks. In fact, we ran our tests for 4 to 5 weeks to really garner feedback because, like I said, not a heavy duty application that people are logging in daily, but it really gave us insights on, what's the right thing to do from an introduction perspective, and see, because then you'll quickly seeing what's going to resonate with your end users or what they're going to be struggling with. And it gave us ideas, working with my design team, working with my engineering team on what we want to introduce. And then it also helped shape the roadmap post launch of this application too, because now we had more ideas, more feedback, more testing on things versus, so this is almost like I guess the good way of saying is a trailer to what's really coming along the way, getting feedback along the way. And then if that was exciting, enticing, or got feedback, then it gave us a validation on this is something that we should develop, or maybe not. And this is a good way of realizing that, hey, we don't want to spend that 4 or 6 weeks of our engineering team on developing something that's not going to resonate. So testing and A/B testing was something that we definitely started to do and start leverage very successfully for sure. Okay, so this whole 9-month journey, it led to a series of things where that poor customer experience of technology that we didn't own now suddenly became that first poster child within the organization. And it led to the self-service experience. And immediately we saw within the first year a 4 million uptick. It might not be a big number in the terms of Amazon or Google, but for a small company, for us, it was a pretty big number that we definitely saw as a benchmark perspective also. More importantly, it really freed up our operations team to do really their job, because what was happening was the call centers were inundated, and there was that handshake that there was going on between the call centers and the operations team. And they were so busy just keeping the lights on or preventing fire from happening. So it was always on the reactive. And now finally they realized, like, hey, I can actually do my day job and not worry about putting fires out, working with the call center and the operations team. And it was great for us from the call center teams, where now for the basic stuff that people would call in about, we saw a 30% reduction with this new application immediately. And this actually kind of going back to what I was talking about in the beginning, the different personas, the rinse and repeat, and the different frameworks. So this is built initially on legacy old technology PHP. And then eventually, when we got done with this, launching this application, we put it on React Angular frameworks. And not only did we launch this application for this group, but then because of the flexibility in the framework and the ability to add more personas or even reuse of these components, we actually spun up additional applications for additional lines of business within less than 6 weeks, which was music to our business, because now, before it would take them 9 months to develop something, and now they don't need to depend on a third party. There was another problem that just came up after the launch of this application, and I immediately told them, hey, why don't we reuse some of the components that we did for the client portal self-serve app and create something brand new. And within 6 weeks, we were able to spin up another application and satisfy another group of business within our organization for sure. Okay, I think that's pretty much coming to an end. There's a couple of books that I, if okay with you, Tom and team, that I want to share. These books you guys have probably maybe have heard of, maybe you haven't, but these are some of the books I've been reading and referring to over the last 3 years. The Lean Startup, I feel like it's always the classic. Everybody, I'm hoping, has heard of Marty Kagan. If not, know who Marty Kagan is, especially in the Bay Area, but his first book on Inspired was phenomenal. I love this mom test. It's a very light read, and especially if you're on a plane going from San Francisco to maybe even like Texas, within 2-3 hours. And the beauty about this book is, especially when you're running those customer surveys, it was really keeping an open mindset and open framework of making sure that you're not surrounding yourself with people that are going to just say yes to everything that you want to hear. And so what happens is, like, yes, I'm going to go share my thought process with my engineering teams, with my design teams, and they'll come back and maybe either challenge me, but now that I've built a great relationship with them, they'll come back and say, oh my God, this is great. But the reality is, when you actually talk to your clients, and they'll come back and say, well, this isn't making sense. So the whole idea of this mom test, without totally giving it away, but having a broad perspective and really reaching out to people, kind of like the initial slide I had about your unhappy customers, they're the ones that are going to give you an amazing amount of insights that, even though you're probably scared to talk to them, but they want to vent, they want to share, and they're going to give you amazing ideas on how to augment, build, and improve your product today for sure. This is another book I know Marty has empowered, and there's one more book that Marty's coming out with. I believe it's called Transformed, pretty soon for sure. This is another book that I really like myself very much, Competing Against Luck. I kind of used the mindset from Clay Christensen about some of the things I shared from that Jobs to Be Done framework. He talks about it in great detail. This is something that he's extremely intelligent, and talks about why the frameworks like Jobs to Be Done are extremely pertinent in the success here for sure. Okay, I said it was a live slide, but I lied. One more slide. This is more of a shameless plug here. This is one of the articles I wrote back when I completed the LEAD program and pivoted from a solution architect into product, and the similarities and overlaps between solution architect roles and the product roles, and overlaps there for sure. So this is a shameless plug that I just quickly wanted to share, and I'm gonna open it up for questions now. All right.
Alok had said, since you're plugging Marty, you should get to speak at a future event when he launches his next book. Marty's spoken at Product Camp Silicon Valley, and a number of events where he's been our headline speaker. So as you say, he's justifiably well known in the Valley. Can definitely vouch for the lean startup and the mom test as well. The mom test was, as you said, a really short book that if you're stuck in an airport somewhere, can blast through, and phenomenal for founders that are trying to figure out, how do I know if this idea is actually worth anything, or if it's just a wild idea that my friends are being polite and saying, oh yeah, great.
Exactly.
So feel free, anyone, to post your questions in the chat window, if you want some of us to read those and respond. If you would like to unmute and just ask the question, with audio, that's certainly welcome as well. We like participation. Somebody was asking if the slides are available later. So, Samir, if you're game, we have in the past posted some of the PDFs under the meeting summaries, but we also make the recording for this available on our YouTube channel, and that should be up within about a week or so.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
I have a question.
Please.
Yeah, hi Samir, this is Joy, and I really love your presentation. And also congratulations on achieving the $4 million revenue on client experience improvement. So I'm interested in learning more about the A/B testing. So how large does your sample size in order to run a valid A/B testing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for us, our initially our audience of client portal application was around 50,000 users or so. And so we had a target of reaching out to 8 to 10% of that to get some ideas on our A/B test. So I would say 8 to 10% is something that we were shooting for, and especially trying to keep our mixed bag of not only our power users, but keeping in mind our occasional or the casual users, because those are the ones we really wanted to garner feedback on testing new functionality for sure.
Got it. So when you select 8 to 10% of your population, is that really like randomly generated?
It could be randomly generated, or you could almost define rules that to kind of figure out the type of audience you want to like target. So you can even say someone that's been logging into your application maybe 5 times a month, and they're spending 10 minutes every session. You can filter and create your query from a testing accordingly per se.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Great question. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to either unmute or if your microphone isn't working well or you don't want to speak, you're welcome to paste it into the chat window as well. And it doesn't have to be a question. We can, if you had certain thoughts or things that were sparked off by this, feel free to share as well.
Hi, Samir. This is Raghu. I missed a lot of the most of the presentation. I guess I joined late, but if it is covering the end-to-end go-to-market stuff, what do you think of all the steps is the most challenging? I guess is my question.
Yeah, Raghu, great to hear from you, and thanks for joining for sure. Well, it kind of goes back to one of the things I was talking about was like, what are we trying to do as an organization? Like, focus on the needs of our business. That's number one, I would say for sure. Number two was listening and having user empathy with your customers, and then boiling it down from a prioritization framework on what are you going to develop from an MVP perspective. I don't know, Raghu, if you've heard that or not, but like what happened was when we ran our series of interviews, a lot of surveys, a lot of data, suddenly we had a lot of great information, and then it made it even a good problem to have on prioritization on what we're going to develop in this first release and then second release, and keeping in releases every 2 weeks for sure. So that really helped from the customer from a jobs to be done perspective. And then number three, I would say, is definitely looking from your competition and ecosystem. And like I might have said that in the beginning, but we weren't necessarily focusing on our direct fintech space, but I was looking at even bigger customers and bigger financial services organization on how they were providing user experiences, and lessons learned from them is something that I wanted to include and implement, especially when we were trying to create this new self-serve journey here.
Got it. And just on a clarification on the MVP, is it all better to do it with a bunch of early adopters, or actually work closely in developing while you're developing the MVP and launch it to everybody?
So we did it like it depends on you for sure. The way I did it was basically it started off with a lot of surveys and interviews we ran in the beginning. That gave us some validation and foundation on what our hypothesis was on where our customers were struggling. The other area, believe it or not, was I was actually, not only me, but along with my design team and my engineering teams, we would listen into our calls, into the recordings of our call center, and get a lot of great insight from our Ring Central. And that would also help validate on why our customers were calling in to the existing legacy application. So that was another area for sure, Raghu for sure, where we use as a starting point benchmarks. And of course, once we launched the application, there was a series of surveys that we would run. And then, of course, now having a lot of analytics, we had a lot more insights available. So we still kept our communication with our advisor community and our customer community as much as possible. But for us, we actually launched this application in alpha, beta, and generally available. And in our alpha was a very small group in the beginning that we wanted to gain feedback. And we learned a lot, even with only when we launched this with 100 users. And then we actually took it to maybe like, I think it was close to 5,000 users in our beta launch, and then got validation that this was on the right track and iron out all our bugs, so to speak, and then launched this generally available.
Thank you.
So when you develop, this is Aziz Cholampar. I have a question regarding the KPIs. So when you develop the KPI, how do you come out with the KPI? Is there any specific rule in terms of you include KPI, certain number of KPIs from different segments, or the initial KPIs for the product development?
Well, you kind of need to go back to what are you looking out for? And that kind of going back to what were the problems that you're trying to solve for? And I'm using Tom as an example, is Tom actually being able to do everything that he needs to do within the client portal application itself? Or is he actually still calling in? And is our call centers, are they increasing or are they decreasing? So that was one of the benchmarks that we were tracking really closely, because we wanted to make sure that this application was intended to be a self-serve sort of experience. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I just didn't want to turn on a bunch of metrics data that was available from Heap, because it's garbage in, garbage out. And you can turn on a bunch of parameters out of the box, and it's very exciting to kind of measure that. But then you have to see from a funnel perspective, seeing on like where the customers are from a life cycle and where they're struggling, whether it's as simple as forgot password or attaching documents or additional information that's missing. And those are some of the things that I was able to create funnel analysis and see where people were struggling, and then we can augment accordingly for sure.
Perfect. I was looking for that initial KPI, then you develop from there. Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Just from a quick recap, somebody had mentioned if you could run down the list of tools. I know you mentioned Heap.
Yes.
What was
Yeah. Google Analytics is something that we used in the beginning, but that was a great freebie tool that was out there. But we felt like it was a great starting point, but we just didn't get enough insights from Google Analytics. So Heap was something that was very, very helpful for sure. The other tool, Tom, was LogRocket. So LogRocket is basically a session replay tool. You have to be really careful, especially depending on what domain and vertical you're in, but making sure that not everybody has access to it, because it's basically you're able to see your customer experience and like exactly what Tom is clicking on, what information. So those are one of the things that I had to be extremely careful and work with my engineering team, because I did have engineers in Ukraine and India and London. And then because of sensitive information available of like Tom's financial information, Tom's social security, all of that information had to be redacted and protected. So in case I was able to see something, I didn't want to make sure that everybody was able to see Tom's financial information, because we had a lot of contractors in different countries helping us develop this application. So that's something that I quickly learned and realized that we keeping the customer in mind, and how do we garner great information, but also protect the customer's identity.
As a security person, thank you. More questions or thoughts?
We have a raised hand from Al.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. I noticed from your background you were in sales in IBM, Oracle, Salesforce. I'm wondering if with the new generative AI possibilities and seeing not quite seeing huge ROI yet, if you were sales back in one of those companies now, what's interesting to you? Like, what's those jobs to be done? Are you hearing about them in financial that the generative AI can focus on? Something maybe a startup should focus on that the big companies are going to miss out on? Just curious your thoughts in general on the new jobs to be done from Gen AI.
Yeah. And like back as a solution architect, even at Salesforce and Oracle and even other IBM for sure, the whole concept of AI, little AI and big AI has been around for several years. Even back working for Salesforce, they introduced it as Einstein to help, whether it's that salesperson or the marketer or the service operations person, the call center expert, to have less clicks and more data available, more insights. So yes, the buzzwords are exciting for sure with ChatGPT, AI, and LLM, and all these amazing technologies. And they've taken the whole little AI and big AI to the next level for sure. And that's going to be expected with technology, right? And there's going to be failures that customers and big enterprise companies will learn. But of course, like you said in the beginning, Al, where smaller companies will be able to adopt quickly some of these technologies, and they'll learn and fail along the way, and of course be able to hopefully pivot quickly and figuring out if they can take advantage of tools and technologies from OpenAI for sure.
May I ask a quick follow-up? Yeah, for sure the traditional AI or machine learning does a lot of what you said. It ranks leads. There's all kinds of applications. I guess I'm struggling to see how the LLMs take that to the next level beyond, very good chatbot that can answer, some structured questions and, definitely generating images and video. I'm just curious, about enterprise, what's really going to be the impact on enterprise? Like, if you were sales back at IBM right now, what would you be like? Oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I would probably say at this stage, whether it's Salesforce or Oracle or IBM, I'm sure they're all drinking the Kool-Aid for sure, and really trying to figure out not just drinking the Kool-Aid, but how it's going to add value for customers, from enterprise customers or small and medium businesses for sure. This is where they have a heavy task ahead of them, and this is going to be a great opportunity for them. And then there's going to be taking the lessons learned from that little AI experience that I shared with you, and then kind of going to what you were talking about from ChatGPT and LLMs and all of that data, that to provide richer insights for the salespeople, or richer insights to the call center folks, or richer insights to that marketer that they're not able to for sure. But there is going to be that journey, of course, in the presentation, and there's something else, but when the rubber meets the road, I think there's yet to be seen from a value perspective. That's how I'm kind of seeing it for now.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, just Raghu had a question. It says, Aziz question, North Star metric and related metrics that evaluate your core product or service would be a good way of defining KPIs, right?
Yeah. And Raghu, that's what we were doing. Kind of like how I said, started off with as simple as forgot password, and then trying to see if customers are still calling into the call centers and improving from a ease of use and self-service perspective. Those are some of the KPIs. And those, if you recall, I don't know if you saw at the beginning of my slide, but I had set some key objectives, and those key objectives was reduce churn, improve customer lifecycle, improve cross-sell, upsell, so ability to sell additional capabilities. And those are some of the KPIs that I was holding myself and my team accountable for sure.
Awesome, thank you.
Any additional questions? Comments? One note just to kind of follow up on the question before last about generative AI. Andrew Ng has recently come out with an updated course several years back, at least 4 years ago, the go-to intro course for kind of a management understanding of machine learning was called AI for Everyone. He has a new course out, which is generative AI for everyone. And the key thing here, I wish that all of the non-technical managers out there that are running around and saying, well, AI will just solve this problem on its own. I wish they would all go through and at least attend the first hour. I believe there's only, they're short little sessions of 5 to 7 minutes. It totals up to maybe an hour a week for 3 weeks or so. And it'll get you a good high-level management understanding of what generative AI does and what it might do in a product. And more importantly, what it does not do, and what the requirements are, and how this is kind of expected to be integrated in with different products and used by businesses. So that's something that is helpful for those of you that are kind of scratching your head in 2024 saying, generative AI is, everybody's saying it's taking over the world, but nobody's explaining how that's going to affect my product or what we could use it for from a strategy perspective. So that's another recommended resource that I put into the chat. If there's any additional questions, or if not, turn it back to Samir. And Raghu, by the way, has posted in the chat window the North Star Framework PDF, which is a good primer downloaded from LinkedIn. But if we've got no further questions for Samir, would you like to wrap up with some closing comments, some parting thoughts, and then we'll get into a little bit of networking and some news and some other tips and things collected from members over the last month.
Yeah, sure. First of all, Tom and team, thanks for this opportunity to let me share not only my career pivot journey experience, but more importantly, about the lessons learned of launching something from ground zero to ground one and being iterative for sure. There are a couple of things I would say from a takeaway, in my opinion, and lessons learned along the way. Number one is making sure that I'm always, and everyone, as no matter what role you are, but being obsessed in helping customers. I think that goes without saying. You don't have to be a product person to be doing this, whether you're in design, engineering, marketing, sales, ops, whatever role you are in your organization. Helping customers is, I think, really the groundwork foundation that I'm really passionate about. I would say number two, making sure that you have not only agile sort of frameworks, but also a mindset where it's not one and done, it's not perfect, and you want to keep releasing, you want to keep learn, and take chances. Be bold and take chances, and it's okay to fail, but making sure that you are data driven and learning lessons from your data failures is something that I've been learning myself along the way for sure. That experimentation, whether it's A/B testing that I talked about, but also being bold and being humble and really figuring out, having user empathy, not only with your customers, but I would say being that quarterback, yet also that cheerleader with your engineering design teams and working closely with various stakeholders to get everyone on board. Doesn't mean everyone's going to be super excited or on board, but figuring out the right balance on launching something in a timely manner.
Excellent, excellent. I think that's very well put. There's a variety of skills. I think you said empathy like 3 times, and I was like, that's my number one thing I look for in people, that they can empathize with the customer, they can empathize with the engineering team, empathize with the business needs. This is the ultimate multidisciplinary thing. Like a quarterback needs to be able to throw, run, and figure out the strategy and execute on that. So thank you for sharing your insight and your personal journey. It's always great to hear from people that have been there and done that. They've got the scars to prove it. And I'm sure you've got more than a few.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and thank you for being so generous with your time. This is always a valuable thing for folks to hear from the people out there. One of the things with product management is that we sometimes we are vastly outnumbered by the folks in engineering and on the business side, and it's very valuable to be able to touch base and hear from folks across different industries, across different regions, and get a feel for what the practice looks like in real life. And I think that's the sort of thing that's difficult to encompass in a short little book or, you know, a chart. You can really take a pulse on what's going on in other companies, so that you don't have this isolation effect that you feel like you're working in a iceberg in the middle of Antarctica and you don't really know what's going on in other companies. So you have to rely on you know, just what you think might be the truth. So this is incredibly valuable, and thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.